Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this session on shifting our perspective in STEM with grace. We hope today that in this session, we will give you a new perspective on how to make STEM more equitable for all students that leads to more degree completion and just more attainment in STEM. So we are going to have opportunities in this session for you to pause and reflect, for you to think about the current state of STEM in your district, in your classroom, at your school. So we would encourage you to grab a piece of paper, have something to write with, or even just take notes on your computer. I am Laura Albrecht, and I'm joined by Dr. Patricia Hilliard.
Hello, how are you? I hope you're having a great day.
We represent the Friday Institute for Educational Innovation at NC State University, and we have spent probably about a year and a half of our work on this idea of STEM and how to make it more equitable for all students. So we're excited to share with you our research and an acronym that we have come up with that we feel will help support students in this process through STEM. We want to begin by giving a little snapshot of what STEM looks like in the United States today. So a little peek into the realities of STEM, where things are, and what the data tells us. Recent research shows that 74% of girls in the US are interested in STEM, which sounds great. And if that is all good and well, of course, we could end the session right here. However, we have found that only about 25% of jobs in STEM are held by women. So that is a significant decrease when you look at a student's interest to their career attainment. Research also shows that male and female students perform equally well on math and science standardized tests. So girls and boys are performing well. They're both equally performing well on these exams. However, males are more likely to enroll in those higher level math and science courses. Another interesting point to tell you is that in middle school, Black and Brown students are highly motivated by their STEM classes. We know that they are very interested in the math and sciences. However, only about 12% of bachelor's degrees in STEM are awarded to these underrepresented groups, women and minorities in STEM. So what a significant decrease. Look at the realities here. We have quite a long ways to go. So we want to focus today really on this gray side. And it's gray, kind of like it is on our weather today, depending on when you're watching this. It's gray outside, the stats are gray. And so we want to dig into this. We want you to think about, what do you think is causing this leaky pipeline? We have found that girls and boys, all students, are really highly motivated in STEM. They perform equally well on standardized exams, but there's this stark reality that minorities and underrepresented groups are still not attaining STEM careers at the same rate as white students. So I'm going to pause here for about 10 to 15 seconds and would like you to think about this question, maybe jot it down, take a couple notes, some bullet points as to what you think may be causing this gap. Coming back together now, when we think about this leaky pipeline, it is no secret then that women and underrepresented minorities are being pushed out of the field of STEM. And with some research, Tricia and I have found that things like gender and racial bias, feelings of isolation, difficult coursework, students just feeling like, I don't see myself in STEM, I can't do this, or they're not supported in this process, they don't feel prepared for whatever reason, they are really, really being pushed out of and or discouraged from pursuing the field of STEM. While we know that, we also know that there are some militating factors, some circumstances that can prevent this from happening, or how we can flip the script, change the narrative so that students can be pushed into STEM rather than pushed out. So we've really looked at these militating factors of what we can do. And Trisha and I have come up with a term, grace, and we are super excited to share this research and this work with you. Grace is a powerful word. It is a word that evokes some emotion, and we hope that it does this for you as well. We're going to spend time breaking down each component of grace and why we feel like, based on research, why this will help support all students and for us to lead to a more equitable STEM workforce. So what is grace? Grace really is this environment that educators set up, create, and design to better prepare our students for their transition from high school to college and college to career. We looked at some research here in the beginning that showed the interest is there, the academics are there, their passion is there, and then there's quite a difference when it comes to career attainment. So we've looked at these factors, and we really want to share with you how we as educators can design this experience for students.
I got to be off of mute in order for you to hear me. What the majority of our session is going to focus on is what GRACE means. GRACE is an acronym. It's yet another acronym in education, but a powerful, memorable acronym that we will gradually unleash as we move throughout this session. The first part of GRACE is a common term that we have in education: growth mindset. So I want you to keep in mind that as we move throughout the session, the G, the R, the A, the C, the E individually will not help us get towards the goal that Laura just mentioned of a more equitable STEM workforce, but it's really how they intersect and work together. When we talk about growth mindset, let's just talk about the M in STEM for a second. There's a lot of myths out there about math that really might be holding back some of our students from pursuing and completing STEM degrees. First thing you've probably heard people say is, well, I'm not a math person. Science has debunked that. There is no such thing as a math brain or a math person. It really is, we all have that ability through practice and through learning. Our brains build mathematical pathways to be there. So without the learning and the practice, yeah, we won't be quote unquote math people, but we need to erase this myth from our consciousness. The second myth that I want to talk about is those who are, the math people who finish things quickly and accurately are the smart ones. That's a very narrow definition, that we have about what a math person is versus isn't. There's other things. This comes from a study on looking at smartness, quote unquote, smartness in math. And it was a qualitative study. And it really looked at what others who are excelling in math value. And it might not be speed. It is accuracy eventually, but it's collaboration. It could also be listening to others, having longer processing times. So that's the second myth that I want us to really get rid of. And then the third myth is that math requires raw talent or brilliance, that there's a brilliance that happens to be there and only certain students possess that brilliance. The reason why we bring up these three myths, and there's more, this article, Dispelling Mathematical Myths, has a number of different ones. The reason why I bring this up, we could probably do an entire presentation just on STEM myths, from the science, the technology, the engineering, and the math, is that these represent a fixed mindset. A mindset in which there is one way to do it, and that is it, and I can't get past it. And that fixed mindset has really set back a number of women in underrepresented groups in STEM. And we can see it manifest itself in a lot of different stats. So just even looking at part of this infographic here, we can see that the intentions for freshmen to major in engineering, math, statistics, or computer science has grown for males and has marginally grown for females there. And then if we look at the part in the orange, we find that a lot of women switch out of their degrees. Over 30% switch out of their degrees to go into other fields. On the next slide, you'll see another part of the infographic that talks about the interest, the attainment, the enrollment within engineering and computer science degree programs has increased. That's good. But if we look deeply at that statistic and we tease out who is graduating with those degrees, only 6%, less than 10% are women of color. Now, is this because of those math myths? Maybe, maybe not. It could be part of a factor that keeps weeding people out. If I'm a woman of color, I'm in this calculus class, I am surrounded by people who do not look like me, and I feel as though they're all succeeding. It might be, I'm just not a math person, I'm not supposed to be here. So what I want us to think about is the impact of growth mindset. And growth mindset, as you may be familiar with, looks at practice rather than innate ability or talent over performance. It looks at intelligence, just like those math myths, it's not fixed. If you are not good at math right now, it doesn't mean that it will always be that way for you. Even small targeted interventions in math and science can be advantageous for especially girls. Laura says that she does this experiment and she asks people in her professional development sessions to draw a picture of a mathematician. Automatically after I said that, what was in your head? Was it a man? Was it a woman? Was it a person of color? So we all have some fixed mindsets that if we are really trying to get women and students of color in STEM, we have to instill and teach them a growth mindset, that challenges are welcome, that failure is okay, that even if you don't feel like you belong in a place, that you can still excel in that place, and that feedback is okay. On the next slide, you will see the power of yet. Listen to the words coming out of your students' mouths and really try to reframe what they are saying. When a student, specifically a student who might have that fixed mindset about your science class or your math class or your engineering class, say, I don't get this, I don't like this, it's not working, I'm done, I give up. If we could just get them to say, okay, you don't understand this yet. You know, you're not good at this yet. And that those lungs in the middle is just a way of saying, okay, maybe you want to step away from this for a second, breathe. It's okay, breathe. And just know that you don't understand it yet, that it's not working yet. So in looking at growth mindset, I want you to reflect on two questions before we move to the R in grace. One is, what do you notice when your students are faced with a challenge? And I especially want you to think about if you teach a STEM subject, a science, a math, a technology, and engineering course, when you see someone who might be part of that leaky pipeline, what do you notice about that person? And in what ways can you teach and encourage a growth mindset, especially for students when they are faced with challenges? Laura is going to continue our journey through grace with R.
Thank you. R in Grace, rigor, another word that is not new to you, I am sure. However, we want to look at rigor and approach it from the mindset of STEM. It is no secret that STEM courses are hard. College classes in the STEM field are a challenge, and there is a little bit of a learning curve going from high school to college. I experienced that myself as a biology major in college. However, we want to look at why that is. Why is there a gap between your high school courses and your college courses? And how can we better prepare students for the rigorous course load in STEM? Before we start that, then, before we dig in, it's important for us to look at what rigor means. And rigor does not necessarily mean more work. Rigor really means what Barbara Blackburn says here. I'll give you a chance to read it. Rigor is really about setting up that environment where high levels of learning are expected, they are supported, and then the students are given an opportunity to demonstrate this high level of learning. When I think about my own self, when I was in the classroom, I felt like I was giving high level experiences. However, I think I may have lacked in that demonstration piece. Did I give my students the opportunity to demonstrate this rigorous learning, or did I just give them an exam and just marked off their score? How did I set up the environment to be more rigorous? I've really been reflective on that lately. We wanted to share with you a piece. Tricia and I had interviewed a couple students this summer, both of which were college sophomores. They gave really good insight into what it's like to be a STEM major going into college and experiencing their freshman year. And we want to share with you one student in particular. He shares about his preparation from high school to college.
Can you tell us about your experiences around STEM in high school?
In high school, my high school really didn't prepare me for STEM. So my major, I just really went in without really any help or anything, not knowing like what I wanted to do. So I had to take engineering intended for a while. And yeah, basically we never really had a class to even help us out for the engineering field.
Okay. Do you have any people in your immediate family that have careers in STEM?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. So I want you to see two stories, one first generation and one not first generation, both in North Carolina, to see that everyone's story is a little bit different, and we have to really reach each and every child, not all, but each and every. So what do you wish you learned in middle and high school that would have better prepared you for college? That's for you, Elijah.
I wish they would have gave me STEM classes or engineering pre-programs to give me a broad idea of what I really wanted to do before I went to college.
Elijah really, I think, is not alone in that. He felt like he wasn't prepared. He felt like his high school classes did not give him a good picture as to what the coursework would be like in high school. And let's look at why, possibly why, or what the reality is of that. Back in 2019, just a year ago, we have some really great, well, great is not the right word to use, disturbing information, research from Nicholas Triplett and James Ford, a 122-page report about the racial inequities in our North Carolina public schools. And I pulled out 3 data points, and I wanted us to examine that to really reiterate where we're at in North Carolina in terms of rigorous coursework, which then could answer our question as to why our students do not feel prepared. One of the data sets here are when you're looking at schools with a high number of students of color, the number of honors courses offered significantly decreases. The drop off is dramatic. And you can see it here, where the higher proportion of students of color, the lower average number of honors courses offered. The same thing is true when we look at AP level courses that a lot of colleges look to for admission. A lot of colleges look to both honors and AP courses, not only for admission, but then also course placement in high school. You can see here, same thing, where the higher the proportion of students of color, the less number or the mean number of AP courses being offered. Also important to look at then, or what is the reality of the teachers, the demographic of teachers in schools of students of high percentage of students of color. Significantly higher likelihood of a student of color taking a course taught by a novice teacher. You can see that is significantly higher. Whites were the comparison group, so they're not included on this bar graph, but you can see here the percent increase by race. Also, there's data points that shows not only a novice teacher, but also teachers that are not certified and or qualified in the course that they're teaching. Again, in schools with a high percentage of students of color, teachers are more likely to teach in content areas where they're not qualified in. They also experience high teacher turnover. And so when we think about a student's opportunity and or attainment in STEM, there is a major difference when we're comparing students of color versus white students. What does this mean then? Students of color are exposed to just less rigorous coursework. Even when they want to, the desire is there, the data shows the desire is there, the interest is there, the ability is there, but they're just not offered that opportunity. Meaning the same thing here for AP and honors courses, and especially when our colleges look to those AP and honors courses with such heavy weight as they do now. And then again, just that less access to highly qualified and experienced teachers.
I don't know what you mean by.
We also have data back from 2019 from the US Department of Education that shows that 48% of students entering college intended on having a STEM major, but 48% of them then changed their major to a non-STEM field. And then in addition, and Tricia had mentioned this earlier as well, that Black and Latino students are almost twice as likely to switch out of a STEM major despite entering it at the same rate. And this correlation was attributed to demographics, high school preparation, and just their overall performance in STEM courses. What can we do? We have really found in the research and in talking with students that we must engage them in rigorous thinking to prepare them for this rigorous coursework in college. But keeping in mind that more rigor does not equal more work. So then what is more rigor? More rigor are things like critical thinking. How often are students engaged in critical thinking? How about higher order questioning? What types of questions are we asking students? Where are we at on Bloom's or that depth of knowledge wheel? Are they engaging in that higher order, deeper thinking, or is it very much recall, summarize, list of facts? How about productive collaboration? Both of the students that we interviewed in that little clip talked about how they relied on other students. And do students know how to productively collaborate with each other? And how can that lead to success with these rigorous courses? Authentic experiences such as problem-based or even project-based learning. If you're familiar with either of those, that is very rigorous. And it's rigorous because it's, again, higher order, deeper thinking. It's not more work, but it's authentic experiences. It gives students the opportunity to really feel like and see themselves in STEM. Just for a moment then, I would like you to think about how you create an environment for rigorous teaching and learning. You know, put yourself in your classroom, in whatever that looks like today, How are you engaging students in this rigorous environment? And then are they given the opportunity to demonstrate their learning? I'll just pause here for a moment, jot down a couple notes or bullet points, and really just think about what we're asking students to do. Is it rigorous? What can we do about it? Knowing that data that we had just shared and knowing the reality for so many of our students, we really would just urge you to take a deep look into how we can increase the rigor and meaningful rigor for our students. I will pass the baton off to Tricia for the third component of grace.
You may have seen a pattern so far. If we are exposing and allowing students to demonstrate that higher level thinking, they will definitely need to have a growth mindset for it. Also, what they would need for right now and then for college and career success is agency. That is the third word in grace, is agency. And there are, I don't know how many definitions, I think at least 100 different definitions of student agency, learner agency, human agency, social agency. We're just going to narrow it down to the most recent definition, which is right here. And I will give you a few seconds to read it. Agency, according to this definition, is really navigating the challenges through school, work, or life and figuring out a way. On the next slide, you will see one explanation on what agency is, especially agency when you put it beside another popular term in education, grit. So I will let Dr. Nagaro explain agency in his own words.
So agency, and I'll just set this up for Nindya, is what I describe it as grit plus, right? That is that, and you clearly effort is important, right? And Angela is absolutely right. Persistence, not giving up. But agency is different in that it starts with critical thinking. And the reason why critical thinking is so important is because we know there are real obstacles in people's lives. And obstacles related to poverty, obstacles related to your circumstances. Many of the workers right around me right now who I hear doing construction have lots of grit. They work 7 days a week, they work all the time, and they're still poor. What they lack is opportunity. What they lack early on is some way to navigate obstacles that will allow them to use their efforts to expand possibilities for mobility and improving their lives.
So Dr. Nagaro mentions opportunity. It's not enough for us to employ or allow students to demonstrate agency, but the opportunity has to be there. And when we think about why, when we think about the trajectory of elementary, middle, high school, college, and success in college, especially success in the STEM career, there are a number of different obstacles that they are going to have to be able to navigate successfully. So they have to have those critical thinking skills. That's developed from that rigorous coursework and the growth mindset. So just some things that we saw in the research is it gets a little bit messy. I forgot that there was this animation on top. It's very, very messy, but we've got to think about, Elijah mentioned this, and in a lot of the research, it mentions that some of the STEM courses are taught by people who have an accent, whether that's a Chinese accent, an Indian. It's not what they are used to. So I don't understand my professor, and I don't understand the content. I can't do this. The next thing is We had some stats somewhere about first generation college students. They don't have a parent to lean on to say, well, what the heck is a registrar and how do I get there? How do I make this tuition payment? How do I, get my books, get all the supplies that I need? That was a factor, a militating factor. Also is navigating the college system. And then there's just so much more that's in the college system that if you weren't first generation, or if you were, that there was the in-state tuition, out-of-state tuition, grants, lecture halls, residence buildings when they could actually go there in person, and drop ad periods. There's so much to navigate within that system, including these rigorous courses, that having agency once you step foot on that college campus, because you've been able to demonstrate agency from kindergarten, middle school through high school, would really help. Two things that we will highlight from the research is students are lost, especially in some of those beginning freshman and sophomore courses. Of course, it depends upon the university, but I go from a school, maybe a rural school, where I've known my teachers, I've known my peers for a very long time. Now I'm in a room with 150 other people. One other reason that agency is important in instilling in our students who are interested in STEM is another part that we want to highlight from the research is that academic advisor, while well-intended, has maybe hundreds of people, hundreds of advisees. And that advisor may not be able to attend to the advisee's needs. And if they do not have agency, they may get lost amongst all of these other ones. And we've read stories about having the wrong courses, not being in the right courses, not having the right foundation courses, because they were not able to meet with their advisor. Here's one of the quotes from a qualitative study. I'll give you a second to read it. This is just one of many, many stories about the need for agency. My advisor just blew me off. We have to teach students right from wherever you are as a middle school, elementary school, or high school teachers, that this is not the answer and that we've got to think critically. If my advisor blows me off, what's plan B? What's plan C? And thinking about the A in GRACE, agency, I just want you to think we're not giving you enough time to actually truly reflect here, so you could always pause and come back to it. But how can you really provide opportunities for students to demonstrate agency now? We've got 3 letters. Let's move on to the fourth. The fourth was a new term to Laura and myself that we learned actually by attending a STEM conference at NC State, not to promote NC State, but it was a really great diversity in STEM conference that we went to. And I think the first session we went to was on counterspaces, and it's not in your kitchen counterspace. It's different. It was a new term for us. So counterspace, oh, we have a little quiz first, forgot. What do these 3 images have in common? So we have North Carolina A&T, Wake Young Women's Leadership Academy, and a women's club. I'm gonna give you 5 more seconds to think. What do they have in common? They're all examples of counterspaces where you bring like groups together, whether that is by race, by gender, or by interest, they are together. So a counterspace is a safe space. It's a safe place, whether it is in an actual building or a virtual setting or a room, where people can come together. Normally, it is people from members of non-traditional groups like women or underrepresented minorities who have been traditionally excluded, in our case, from STEM education. The need for counter spaces is strong. Again, Laura and I did the backwards design. We looked at the research to create grace. So what are students saying who are exiting STEM? We're going to jump down to the bottom one. Feelings of isolation is what we saw a lot of in the research. So why are counter spaces needed? It helps with peer learning. It's a safe space to just vent frustrations. Talk about discrimination, talk about racism, talk about sexism, talk about the isms that might be happening to you with people who also have experienced that. And then also to build that positive climate, that positive racial climate. And most importantly, as I started with, is to really combat those feelings of, I'm in this by myself. Here is a quote from, unfortunately, a person who exited an engineering program. So Deanna is not the only one that felt that she didn't belong, that she, he, or they did not belong. There are thousands of other students who had almost like an imposter syndrome. I was the only woman in the class. I was only the person of color in the class. I just didn't feel like I belonged here. And we're not saying counter spaces is a solution, but it is one part of a success that some people have found that have kept them in engineering majors or science majors or math or computer science. In this final reflection, you probably think, well, I can't make a child join an organization in college. I'm not there. But I want you to instill in students the importance of having a counter space. And I want you to think about it personally first. Have you been part of a counter space? Maybe that's a book club. Maybe that's a women's club. Maybe that is a math club. Have you been part of that counter space, and how did it feel to be part of it? Then I want you to think about now and after this presentation is in what ways can you promote counter spaces right now within your school, within your district, within your building for girls and underrepresented groups who are interested in STEM, so they have those safe spaces now and they know to seek them out when they exit successfully high school and move into a college environment.
We have made it to the last and final component of GRACE. We have worked our way through growth mindset, rigor, agency, counter spaces. And so the last component that we feel is so important to this puzzle, and that is experiences, high quality STEM experiences for students. And you might be thinking this is nothing new. You might know how important it is for students to get out there and experience this. But the question now is the why and the how, and we hope to fill that in for you here. We want to share with you another little snippet from our interview with a student, and she shares her experience with STEM and potentially what sparked her interest.
So Gabby, why are you interested in having a career in the STEM field?
So I want to be a molecular geneticist. I've known that since my senior year of high school. And I just sort of want to do researching in DNA and studying like different traits. And so that's like my goal so far.
So far?
Yeah.
How many other people in your family, in your immediate family, have careers in STEM?
Actually, both my parents. My mom is a bio major and she teaches as well. And my dad, he is a finance major, but he works with biotechnology.
Okay, nice. What experience, without naming any school, and without naming any, don't name any names, but what experiences did you have around STEM in high school that you remember?
Okay, so I did a lot of college visits. I did some job shadowing at NC State as well. Like I talked to a lot of people and got their input on things to see like what I wanted to do. And my teachers and well, my bio teacher actually helped me a lot in high school by giving me some tips and showing me a lot of things with genetics. So that's kind of like what I wanted. That's what I figured out. Okay, that's what I want to do. And then discovery education with Miss Albrecht. That's what helped me as well.
Tell us a little bit about discovery education.
Wow. Okay. So I believe that was 8th grade, right? 8th grade going to 9th.
Yeah, 8th grade going into your 9th grade year.
So, okay, what I remember, we took a lot of field trips and we did a bunch of hands-on activities. So that's what I enjoyed, the hands-on. I am a visual and I like to feel things and be like, oh, this is cool, you know? So I was more the hands-on person. I do remember learning a lot about bugs, going out into, honestly, going out into the parking lot or into the forest and just figuring out, okay, this is this. And I think we did things on birds as well, but yeah, just what I remember.
Okay. All right. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like experiences that you've had along with parents has really helped you
Yes.
focus on this career in STEM. Is that correct?
Yes.
That experience was just one that she had shared, and you can see how that was impactful to her between her own interest with genetics and biology, her job shadowing, her exposure from her parents, but also the experience that she had with her summer program and just various opportunities that she had had from her teacher and at her high school.
So Gabby,
so it's really no secret then that high quality STEM experiences play a major role in student interest and attainment. I mean, you can find gobs and gobs of research on that. But really, the reason for that is it gives students the opportunity to see themselves in STEM. They can experience what it is like when a student walks into their college engineering class and has never spoken to, seen, or experienced anything related to engineering. That's a problem. There's an issue there. We want students to walk in feeling confident. They know what it's like to be an engineer. They maybe have even spoken to an engineer before. They feel confident that not only is this what I want to do, but I'm going to be successful in doing that as well. And that kind of goes into a term that's used in the STEM world, which is STEM capital. So really factors that influence education outcomes, or really increasing a student's opportunity for success with exposure to STEM experiences. That can even be little things like, what resources are we giving students? What are we sending home with them? What are we sharing with them? Are we exposing them to STEM, whether that be intentionally or unintentionally, explicitly, maybe not so explicitly, just kind of sneaking it in there. They can experience STEM without really even labeling it as STEM. And then how can we do this? You probably are thinking, field trips, mentorships, job shadowing, all of which are great. And especially mentorships, there is so much research that shows the impact for students, especially girls and students of color, to have mentors in high school and in college for attainment in STEM. But there's even more than that. And so in addition to some of those things, we also want to think about how we can bring the experience to them. What are we bringing into the classroom? How are we exposing them to these big and small STEM experiences? We can also think about non-traditional STEM careers. So we can think about outside of the silos of S, T, E, and M. How about like textile engineering or any sort of environmentally friendly design for a playground, or designing more user-friendly baby supplies, anything that might spark the interest of our students. It's STEM. And opportunities through our PLNs. PLNs are huge, as we know, and maybe your PLN stretches beyond your school or your district. Maybe it's across the state or even nationally. So connecting with other teachers who are also in this field and want to support students in STEM. Our media coordinators are maybe an untapped resource that you could collaborate with on how to bring more STEM experiences to students through even, of course, through mystery Skypes or things like that, but even just reading materials, maker spaces, anything that they can bring into their learning commons to support students through this. And I also think a very, something that doesn't get enough recognition is our former students. Speaking with former students, bring them in, Skype them in, have them do a little Q&A with students, have them share what their freshman year of college was like, or have students feel like they can connect with past students and they can build that relationship and give them tips and tricks for being successful in STEM. Students like to hear from other students. So as you just take a moment, reflect, like Trisha said, you can pause here and think about what experiences you might be able to bring to your students. And it can be big or small. It doesn't have to be anything super transformative, but anything that you might be able to broaden the exposure to STEM for your students will be impactful. And just like that, we have grace. We really, really are so passionate about this. And we feel like if we teach with grace, we can truly promote equity in STEM. We can close those gaps, those numbers of students switching their major out of STEM, or those students that are feeling discouraged in STEM, those students that feel like they don't belong. We've flipped the script, we've changed the narrative, and in a few more years, those numbers will change. But even more so on a personal level, we have our students in our classes that we know can be successful, and our heart is there, their heart is there, and we want to see them successful in STEM. We did want to leave you with a few more resources around grace. So when we share these slides with you, we hope that you can dig into some of these resources. And then Trisha and I also did write a blog post around middle school girls and STEM and how we can close that gender gap using digital tools, things like virtual mentorships and things like that, of that nature. As you know, for this conference, you are to complete an evaluation. And so here is the bit.ly for our session. We are session 5. So your bit.ly doesn't change except for that last little bit, S5. And we hope that you give us honest feedback. We are continuing to evolve this work and update our research. And we want to know what you found valuable, resourceful, helpful, but also what you need from us and what you find to be valuable to you. And with that, we thank you so much for selecting this session, for viewing this recording. Like we had said before, we're passionate about this. And so if you are too, please connect with us on Twitter or send us an email. We would love to hear how you are implementing some of this work, and would love to hear your stories. If you have students that you'd like to share any sort of testimonials with us, we would love to hear that as well. We thank you so much.
Thank you.